Welcome back to Frightening Frauen. You didn't say it though. You have to say
I
it.
know I didn't do, okay. Recording in progress. I was trying not to. I was like, I can do it. I cannot do it. But you made me, so I did it.
I'm not going to let you. So we have Tyler, Lee, and a guest, Ray, on today, who is
Hi.
amazing. Ray has been working on some awesome stuff in her field of occupation. I don't know what to say. Um, so why don't you tell us a little bit about it and what you do and what you've created and how you came to want to do this?
Yeah. So a lot of just kind of questions built into that. Well, I am a licensed professional clinical counselor. I've been in the field of mental health for, I want to say about 8, 9-ish years, maybe probably more 10 or 11, but I've been a therapist for about 6 years, licensed for approximately 2 or 3. But currently I work with clients with complex trauma and dissociation, and I got my groundings in dialectical and behavioral therapy, which is usually composed of like a group structure, which is like just a whole bunch of like life skills. And oftentimes people come into DBT from the hospital or when they have other life-threatening behaviors such as like self-harm, chronic suicidal ideation, and anything like this. But even just treatment-resistant depression and anything else that like normal outpatient therapy hasn't been effective for. And so I always knew that I wanted to get into the field of mental health and specifically trauma. But I didn't really know how to like find my footing. And I just kind of stumbled into a DBT clinic and I had no idea what I was doing. But it was actually a really nice way for me to know how to structure groups because essentially DBT taught me like, okay, here's what people are coming in with, here's the skills that you can teach them. And so being just new with the lingo, I was like, okay, cool. I know what I know what to say, and not just be floundering with my words. So then I started more advanced trauma training. So I got trained in EMDR. And then Minnesota, there are 3 women who developed what's called the AIR network model for trauma and dissociation. And I heard about this after I started working with my therapist in grad school, who actually works from the AIR network model. So I didn't even know I was in this therapy when I heard about it. And so what this model teaches is it looks into the neurodevelopment of trauma and dissociation. So it looks into like what happens to our brains and bodies when we go through trauma, especially at like those prime developmental ages and how it impacts us growing up. And then this goes on to show like why we have difficulties like with regulating emotions. Why do we end up dissociating? It goes into talking about like the research and brain scans with dissociative identity disorder to show that like, yes, this is a real thing. And so just very complex training. But after I got trained in this, a coworker and I, we were taking this training together and we were like, oh my God, there's so much overlap with DBT and AIR network. And where DBT kind of like leaves out clients with a lot of trauma symptoms. And like, we were just seeing so many people who came into DBT and they're like, yeah, these skills are great, but like, I just don't know how to apply them. And I have so much other stuff. So essentially, Air Network, we were able to kind of like see ways in which we could utilize that to help bridge that gap between what clients weren't getting with DBT through Air Network and then make DBT work for them. So this is just like workings in our minds. We were like, okay, maybe we could like make an air DBT group. I don't know what this would look like. But fast forward a couple years later, um, we didn't really think too much more about this. We kind of incorporated this into our group. So we would essentially teach clients grounding strategies, but also strategies to recognize when they were like in trauma loops and teach them like developmentally that or neurologically this makes sense that right now or in these moments you don't have access to the skills that you know how to use because the part of your brain that learned those skills is not online. And the part of your brain that is
Mm.
online is these like younger developmental years. So you literally are not, you don't have access
You're
to the skills that you have.
disassociated from the skills themselves.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yep. And so we teach clients how to then build that awareness. So we call it multi-directional attention and awareness. So it's this awareness of like, okay, this is what's happening. My brain is telling me like I'm living right in the past, like I'm 8 years old right now. But then the other part of our attention turns to, okay, let's look around us. What do I know about my present? To then decrease the dissociation so that we are not fully dissociated, but maybe in that state of like partial dissociation where we still have awareness of what's going on right now. And when we gain awareness of what's going on right now, even slightly, we then get access to that part of our brain that has access to those skills. So then we can utilize DBT skills.
Okay, and that's where
So,
some of the tools like EMDR or like art therapy and things like that can
mhm,
come into play to kind of help bridge that gap and teach you how to use those
absolutely.
skills during that time. Oh, oh no.
Absolutely. Yep. For then art therapy is always helpful. EMDR. Oh, are we back?
We're back. You froze for a
My
second.
internet connection is unstable, it says.
If you
Okay,
is
cool.
it better now? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I think art therapy is always helpful. And then like I always hear with like EMDR, clients will come in and say, I was kind of told EMDR would be helpful and I did it. And now like things are so much worse because we go in and process things when we don't have the skill sets to manage what comes up. Because if there is that dissociation, like dissociation is protective. It was
Mhm.
formed for a reason. And so when we bring back the information that we're disconnecting from, but we don't have the tools to deal with what comes up, it creates more distress. So EMDR, we like it can be helpful, but usually after we do some like more skills use, more skills teaching, like through DBT. Um, yeah, I feel like
That
I'm
that makes
rambling
that
a
does
little
make
bit.
sense. No, no, that makes sense because I know with my son who has done EMDR, it was really detrimental when this was another aspect of it though. So he had an amazing therapist that did it with him, and he does disassociate. It's
Mhm.
not dissociative identity disorder, but he does disassociate. And the therapist quit or got fired. We're not really sure what. And that
Mhm.
relationship ended in the middle of dealing with things, and it left him more vulnerable and more like in a worse place. But
Oh,
I,
absolutely.
yeah, and it took him a long time to trust somebody to get back into it to try to um, to kind of bridge what they had been working on, recreate his safe
Yeah.
space and get to that place again. Because people I know that I think Lee's dealt with this too of having a therapist and like starting to do real good work and then you lose them. You have to start all over again with someone else. And
Hmm.
so that's been challenging too with when you do something like EMDR that does take more than one
Yeah.
session to get through.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean that's a reason why we need to build up so many resources before even starting EMDR so that if any ruptures happen or if like unexpected things come up between sessions, we have the tools to manage that. Um, because then so much disruption can happen and it's much more damaging.
It just started raining. It's like really
Oh no.
loud. And I was like, what is that noise? What's happening right now? I was like, oh, it's the rain.
Lee, have you ever done EMDR or art therapy?
Mm-mm. My therapist offered EMDR and I didn't want to. I wasn't like ready to like say things out loud yet. And then my ex is doing art therapy actually and seems to work really well for him because he's just so disconnected from himself and the art. These homework assignments seem to help him like recognize things that he's just like forgotten how to recognize over throughout his life. So I think that's pretty cool. I haven't
Mhm.
tried it, but
And for those
um
listening, art therapy is not drawing. What does it stand for again?
Accelerated resolution therapy.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, when they first asked if I wanted my son to do it, I'm like, of course he can draw. Like, what?
okay, so my ex is doing literal art therapy, so not
Oh,
ART therapy. Yeah,
literal art
he's actually
Oh,
working with the
okay.
therapist who uses art as part of like the homework to
I do that.
yeah.
But I think that is so powerful. Like there's so much that like we can't verbalize that art just has that power to do so for us. And I think like finding the ways in which like people can communicate the best in is the most powerful way to do therapy, I think. And so having that specialized approach with art therapy, like it just allows us to tap into this other like creative side that might be able to express more than we can vocally and verbally.
And it's something you
So I
can
love
continue on doing at home,
yeah.
and like it's something that you can
Mm,
like continue to express in a positive way and realize what your art is actually telling you. Lee does a lot of
yeah.
art.
I haven't learned how to because like I haven't painted in a while because of moving everything, but when I was painting, I wanted to learn how to connect like how I was feeling to what I was doing, and I hadn't gotten there yet. I felt like I had just started to get to that point because like I have sort of like this block for things. So I'm very like analytical and very functional and I don't, and I was like, I want to find a way to get like the feelings to bleed into it. And I was just there, then like everything happened. And so I'm looking forward to like being able to go back and get back into painting again.
Yeah, your paintings are awesome too. So I support that.
They're chaotic.
I'm smiling
Yeah.
because I can relate to that like analytical piece and just like having that create such an emotional block. And it's funny because I was literally in therapy today and kind of talking about that. And I always use the phrase like I can logic my way out of my emotions, or like I can think too hard or try to like figure out my emotions so much that like I can't end up feeling them. And I I struggle with art, so my creative form of expression is writing, which
Yeah.
makes it harder. So I've been trying to like write more expressively, but having like more of a medium of like art, I feel like would be super helpful. But it's it's also validating to hear that like you would still experience that like block um from like that those like logic reasonable thoughts like from your to words but but how like your emotions can still get blocked from even getting out on a page because of just being up in your head.
Yeah. I'm not really great at I didn't know, but apparently like most people, they feel emotions all the time and I don't. Like most of the time I'm pretty like just whatever, right? And I feel
Hmm.
emotions in response to like stimuli or whatever. But I went through this
Yeah.
phase when perimenopause kicked in where I started feeling everything all at once, constantly. And I basically cried for like a year. And my therapist just kept being like, just feel your feelings, you know. And I ended up building this huge vocabulary for like emotions that I'd never had before because I just never really ran into most of those emotions, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that I was like blocked from my emotions. I just think that I don't know if it's the autism or whatever, but I just don't feel all the time, you know. And like so if you ask me how I'm feeling, my brain goes and I have to analyze. And then most of my answers are gonna be about my body because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, you know, feeling anything particularly emotional. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was a very interesting experience that like gave me like perspective about how like other people who are very emotional that in the past I would have been like, I don't understand what they're going through at all. Like, you know, and it was like all of a sudden I was like, oh, because it was like huge. It's just so, you know, in the body. But
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it's
exhausting.
yeah.
No kidding.
I was very, I would say, disassociated from the time I was about 10 until I'd say 24. And there's bits and
Hmm.
pieces that I remember, but I don't remember very many feelings from that time. And I don't remember very many like sentimental things to me that happened. It was like I was just existing. Um,
Yeah.
and I didn't put both together. And it was a very protective thing. It was, I mean, I went through a
Hmm.
ton of trauma starting at 10 until 17, and then bits and pieces of trauma after that. And it
Yep.
wasn't until I was back in college dealing with like health stuff while dealing with going to school and working and taking care of the kids and all of this stuff at once that all of a sudden it was like everything rushed into me at once and I didn't know what to
Hmm.
do with it. So I do relate to that, Lee. Like I said all the normal like, yeah, I'm fine, I'm okay, whatever when people would ask me and never really dealt with anything or shared
Yeah.
anything until I was about 24, 25, and then I became an oversharer.
Yeah, I have always been a bit of a overshare. I have like private areas that I don't like, but that's why I did the NaNoWriMo like 2 years ago, where I sat down. I'm like, I'm gonna write out all of my trauma so that I can actually like just get it out there because that's the stuff I tend to keep to myself. And then that's when I realized that I probably do have like some disassociation because like I didn't really feel very much about any of it, except for like when I was done writing, I went, okay, so every single therapist who said that I have a fuck ton of trauma, like way more than any one person should go through, was okay. I can see what they're saying because I would never like they would say it to me, and I just feel like, okay, that's just what I went through, like you know.
Hmm.
And then once it was on paper, well, digital paper, I was like, whoa, that's a lot, you know. And that was kind of my takeaway from it. And um,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Right.
that's also I learned I have blank spots too. Like I can
Mm.
remember before and after, but I can't remember the actual traumas and stuff. So that was very interesting to me to like be like, oh, okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. Do you find, Ray, that a lot more people do have disassociation than are diagnosed?
Mm. That's a good question. Um, so I always introduce dissociation to people as a spectrum
Mm-hmm.
because every single human being in this entire planet dissociates to some level. And so the way to understand this better, like it can be helpful to like look at why dissociation occurs in the first place. So we we dissociate when like things become too much for our bodies. And so like especially during very important developmental times of our life, if there were times where like specific needs, and I'm talking about like first like few months of our life. Like if there were needs that we didn't get met, if any part of us were feeling like something wasn't safe, um, during those times, like in those few months, and also like the first, like I would say 10, 12 years of our life, um, we cannot acknowledge when our environment is not safe because we don't have control. We don't have control over our environment. So we have to kind of disassociate from that reality a bit, to be able to survive it. And so we create, in Air Network, we call stress responses core survival networks. And so we have these core survival networks like the fight, flight, freeze, these responses, to protect us. So dissociation is protective when, things from our external environment become too much internally for us to deal with it. So we kind of like split apart so that, we can survive. So the most extreme form, I would say, is like, usually physical neglect. So a child needs attunement and attention, and a child can still survive, like if like, or I mean emotional neglect. A child can still survive if you feed them, if you meet all their basic needs, but they still need that emotional attunement because we are wired as social beings, social creatures. And so we need to take in information from other people to learn like, social cues. So learn how to smile, learn how to laugh, learn appropriate emotions, how to regulate our emotions. We need to have someone that we can attach to learn how to like self-soothe and regulate, someone who can meet our needs. So when those needs aren't being met, even though like we have everything we need to physically survive, our body's like, I'm still not getting what I need. So that's too painful. And our brain kind of severs and disconnects from that reality because our brains are wired, our brain and bodies are wired to survive. So if we didn't dissociate, if we didn't disconnect and sever from reality, essentially, we would just die. um, so going back to your question, we all have experiences that have allowed us to dissociate. Like we all go through stress at any given time, and we've learned ways to shut down. Maybe it's daydreaming, maybe it's zoning out. So I wish I had this, the dissociative spectrum picture that I show in groups, but
If
on
you
one
want
end
to
we have,
if you want to send it to me, I can post it when the video posts too, so
yeah,
that people can see it.
yeah, perfect. I will definitely do that. So on one spectrum, we have, like just the normal, like I'm on my way to work and I get to work and I'm like, I know I left home and I know that I drove technically, but I could not tell you like if I hit, sorry, my cat's sticking her head in a bag. Um, but um, so she's been meowing at my door, clawing at my closet, and I've been trying to ignore her.
It's so hard
And
to
now
ignore them.
it is, and I usually
Or
keep my door open so she can go in and out, but
if you
anyway,
want to, we're fine with the cat coming in and out.
Yeah.
I just
Amos
prefer my
usually
door to
does.
be closed to get like privacy, and
Okay.
then I don't hear everything going on. But so it would not serve us to remember every single red light or green light that we hit. So like we can't just hold this information in our head because it doesn't serve us. So we dissociate and check out from that. We go on autopilot. So we have that normal, just autopilot mode, which we all go on. Then we might get more into like more daydreaming, where we have more moments of like, I am zoning out, and I might like lose my attention and focus, and I might be in my head and someone might call my name, and like suddenly I'm like, oh yeah, I don't really know where I was. And so that's like a few percentages up from normal autopilot. And then we keep on up the continuum, and I can't remember if there's something in between daydreaming and um depersonalization, derealization, but then we start getting into the middle where we do see more like of that depersonalization and derealization. And that's where we oh, what's before that is like, I think this is where we see more like trauma based symptoms. So trauma related dissociation. And so this is where we start seeing more diagnoses happening. The the side of daydreaming and autopilot, that's not really what we diagnose, even though it's still forms of dissociation. Um, then we do have like PTSD and whatnot. And with PTSD, there's normal forms of dissociation. With any trauma, we're going to dissociate. Um, but then when it becomes more prevalent to the point where to the point where we are starting to experience depersonalization and derealization, which is when we start not feeling real. So we might like look at ourselves either in the mirror or look down on ourselves, and we're like, I have no idea who this is, or I just look funny, or like I just don't feel real.
So
Derealization is like,
I have where my limbs don't feel like they're mine. And my doctor called it something,
yeah.
but is it like that where parts of your body don't feel like it's you?
Mhm. Yep. Yep. Yeah, that would be a form of depersonalization as well. So when I'm kind of going through this with clients, I'll say like, if you like pat your arms, you might be like, I know this is me, but like
Mhm.
I don't really feel like it's me. Like I can kind of feel it, but it takes me like pounding on myself to really like feel connected to this limb
Mhm.
kind of thing. Um, and then derealization, I kind of describe it as like um it can be looking externally through as though we have like a bubble on our heads. It might look like we're watching our external environment play out like a movie, or like an old time reel, but like things just don't feel real. They don't have, we might know that they're real, but they don't have the essence of feeling like reality. And this is like more like diagnosable dissociation, because this is more intense than like that, like checking out and daydreaming and maybe having what we call um like dissociative reactions, or which include like flashbacks and whatnot. So those the dissociation related to PTSD can often happen when we get triggered, or when there are like just reminders around us. But then when it kind of like goes into your everyday life, like we might see more like derealization or depersonalization more of the time. Then we move further up the spectrum where we do start seeing like um, maybe some time loss, memory loss. These are moments when we can look back um, on the day, and maybe we're like, I don't know what I did for this chunk of 5 hours of the day, or maybe like I don't even remember the last 3 days of this week. It's just really fuzzy. I know I was talking to my therapist last week, and she was asking me about my week, and I said, I was like, I had an okay week, and I was kind of going from that day and recounting back, and I'm like, I don't know what happened or like from Tuesday to like into the weekend, like I'm realizing like my memory for that is very fuzzy. And then the very far end of the dissociative spectrum is where we see more DID, which this is where we start having like, when we do have more like memory gaps in memory, where we might like not have any solid memory for like 3 years time. We might know certain things happened, but we don't really know too much about what happened. And we also might notice that like I have I've been told that I did something, said something, or maybe I found something that I know was me, but I don't remember doing it. So it's it's as though like another part of us comes out and is kind of like living our lives for us because we got overwhelmed. So another part had to like step in and kind of take over, because something got too overwhelming. So from like that derealization and above, that's when we start diagnosing like a dissociative disorder.
Okay. I think the derealization and then the not feeling like my body is where I get with my PTSD. And I think that's kind of where I was for those years too, because it does feel more like a dream than it did like I was living it.
Yep.
I didn't really ever think about it as like disassociation. It's something I'll have to talk to my therapist about. But sorry, there's a bug. But because I mean, I've talked to her about it before, where there are certain things that are like hardships for me. Don't they don't really feel real, and I have to talk myself into advocating for myself and all this stuff because I just it literally just it doesn't feel real, and I feel like I'm constantly gaslighting myself because of it. It's very irritating, since I'm dealing with chronic health issues, because it's a lot easier before that
Right.
because I wasn't running into it, but now I'm like, you know and I've mentioned to her several times where I'm just like, this stuff doesn't feel real. And that's why when I decided to do the NaNoWriMo and write down my trauma and stuff, it was very like I was very disconnected from it. And it was very like, okay, well, that's interesting. I mean, I'm kind of okay being disconnected from it after writing it out, but
Yeah.
functionally, it takes a lot of energy to be constantly talking myself into doing the things, taking the steps of the things as if it is real when it doesn't feel real. Like,
Yep.
you know,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's very, very hard. And so the the air network model that I work from, we really work with clients in helping them like one, understanding why their dissociation like was created and why it was super helpful, and why it continues to be helpful. And then also we um there are also like things that we call like um things that can be like programming as that also get in our way. So like I'm thinking, um so things that we might have learned. So your use of like gaslighting yourself, that made me think of um something that we can easily like learn as something that we it's just second nature sometimes for us to do to ourselves. And so if we were always taught that like, even if we like had a broken bone or were sick, if we were taught like it's not a big deal, like just suck it up, or this,
Rub
that, the
some
other
dirt on
thing.
it.
um,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And we were taught like, oh, it's only if you're dying that's when you go get help. Then we start like kind of taking these messages internally as well. And so these messages can range from like a wide range of things. So it can, I mean, I can't even think of a specific example, but over time then, like with gaslighting specifically, we can experience like chronic health conditions and like downplay it and learn not to advocate for ourselves because it's like, well, I'm not dying. And it's because of like what we've learned. And so one thing that I've used a lot with people is asking like, um, is this is this something that you would choose choose to say to yourself? Like, does this feel like it's coming from you, or do you feel like this message has been learned? Like, did you learn this from someone else? And so a lot of this can also like impact just like how we view ourselves, and um we can start feeling like certain messages that were instilled during times of trauma, like they can really get confused. We can confuse them with like who we are, if that's making sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so a
Yeah.
lot of like this trauma work with dissociation, because these programmed messages can also like increase dissociation as well. Um, so with like all the work that we do, we're working on just like untangling all these and um, bringing in ways to bring awareness to like the present, and kind of like not detaching, but I would say rewiring our brains to recognize like, right, trauma has happened. It impacts me now, and that is not happening now. Um, and here is what is happening, because our brain re-experiences things as if they are happening now. So it's all about trying to strengthen like what we do know now versus like what's been instilled in us like our whole lives.
Yeah.
Is that different for people who come to you who are still experiencing trauma?
Yes, yes. So I think it's similar processes that are going on, but we have to be a lot more careful um, working with those who are experiencing ongoing trauma. And it depends on what is the
Mhm.
situation. So it would look different depending on what is going on.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So if it's something
Yep.
physical and
Yep.
like for us, like having chronic pain and chronic conditions going on, which is traumatic,
Yep.
and it's not going to
Yes.
get better. And so you need to figure out the
Yep.
tools to move forward and deal with it, but also like replace what is going on with
Mhm.
disassociating with tools that you can use. Um, like, yeah,
Absolutely.
of course, if it's
Yep.
something that
And
they need
especially with
help getting out of.
right. And especially with things like chronic conditions and medical trauma, um, there's a lot that we might need to like work through from like past medical trauma,
Mhm.
to like remain grounded when current stuff is going on. Um, because a lot of past medical trauma stuff can cause us to dissociate in the present. And it's then the tricky balance of saying like, that medical trauma is not going on right now. Here's how it's different. And
Yeah.
trying to like find that fine line. But yeah, it's very challenging. And then it's also like looking at, okay, how can we use dissociation in our favor?
Mhm.
Like when is it maybe not a good time to be present? um, I talk with my female clients, or my clients assigned female at birth, who have to go in for annual exams, and I'm like, use your dissociation,
Mhm.
please. Like you have it for a reason. Like, you do not need to use your skills in that moment. Let this work. do. So,
Which it is a skill
like
to
it,
be able to put yourself into it and take yourself out of it as well. Because, like, thinking back, we kind of dissociate by scrolling through our phones when we need a little downtime.
absolutely. Oh,
I'm
here's
not good at that. I don't like I hardly scroll at all. Like I just, like I've been making myself watch TV recently because I have a tendency to like do things that are very engaging and be very focused all the time. And I was like, yeah, I need to just stare at the TV or something. And it is really hard, but it's getting a little bit easier to like just
yeah,
feel because I don't feel like I'm doing anything when I'm doing that. So,
right.
but
So,
my
I
cat has
like that
started,
you.
I was gonna say my cat just started cuddling with me after like almost 2 years. And so that's what and it's when I watch TV. So it's become like, that's what I'm doing and, totally justifiable.
Oh, I love that.
I approve.
Yeah, and I like that you bring that up, that like that desire to want to learn how to just like watch TV and not have to think about like what else you have to do. Like that need to stay busy or occupied can be like a huge hindrance. So part of like with my training in DBT and in air, what a colleague and I did after a lot of talking collaboration, we eventually got our clinic, the clinic that we're currently working on, DBT state certified, and we created a curriculum and like made our own like DBT Air Network program. So it's the only one in the state anywhere that's combining these two approaches. So like with your example, we often talk about like, okay, why do our minds need to stay so busy? What is that protecting? And then like some of the skills that we teach are like how to mindfully distract and allow ourselves to do that while letting go of not of like all the like what we call doing mind thoughts. So I need to do this or should be doing this or this, that, the
Yeah.
other thing. Because it is helpful to, and then also leaning into like those dissociation skills or dissociative abilities, as we call them, and letting them work for us when we need them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's okay to not be
And my cat
thinking
is
and doing all
very,
the time.
yes,
That's
yes.
hard.
Oh,
And I love doing stuff, so it's partially like almost feels like self-denial, but I do really feel like I have to be better at just sitting still sometimes. And you know it
yeah,
just like if I can be more comfortable, then when I'm really fatigued and my health is really bothering me, it won't be so emotionally distressing when I can't do stuff.
Hmm.
That's
yep. Right, right. And especially with chronic health conditions, there are going to be times where you'll have to like be not doing too much. And so
yeah.
to build up that tolerance to sit and just be is really important for those times when like your medical health is telling you like I can't do anything right
Yeah.
now.
I'll sometimes I
Mhm.
just repeat, resting is a thing. You are doing something, you know.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
true. And
It is
it's easier to tell someone else that they can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh,
I am the
it's
best at
hard.
telling my clients exactly what is going to be helpful for them, and I am the worst at applying it for myself.
Yeah.
That's so
Curse of being
accurate.
a therapist.
Yeah. But
Ow.
anytime like my brain gets super negative, like my trick for getting through that is would I think this way about someone else, or would I say this to someone else?
Hmm.
And
Mm,
it's and every time like I'll just be like, no, I wouldn't do that. So obviously I have noise coming in from some other source in my past, and that's kind of my way of like, because I don't like feeling like things are getting in the way. So if I feel anxious and it makes me nervous to do something because I'm feeling anxious, I will bulldoze that wall. I like anxiety makes me mad. So then I have to like that's how I work through it is I go, okay, well, why am I feeling this? What is the what is the negativity that's giving me this nervousness? And then I just do it anyways, And I know it's not that easy for some people. It's just something I taught myself when I was younger, but it helped me learn to differentiate between my own sort of internal noises and other people's noises.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I do the
Yeah.
opposite. I'll freeze and not do anything until the deadline is there, and then I'll do it all.
Well, that's just my ADHD, but
Oh,
deadlines are my dopamine friend.
Yep.
that's so true.
I'm more with Victoria. I freeze, but my mind is like thinking about it and thinking about everything I need to do, and then and then I'll finally do it at the last minute because I know I absolutely have to, but my thoughts are always like there and not letting me forget that I have
Yeah.
to do the thing.
Yeah, uh, I fill my time with so much stuff that, so like even when I was off work because um, I got laid off. I found out everyone else did too. Um, while I was in medic or going on to medical leave. So I was in the process of going on to it. So I didn't get any money because of that. And I filled my time still, even though I was stuck in bed. I could barely get up. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do my podcast. I'm going to do like make content. I'm going to edit pictures. I'm going to do all this stuff and ended up filling all my time, not giving myself any time to actually rest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of it was just worrying. So,
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Also, the first 5 years I was sick, I was just constant, just in survival mode, trying to
mhm.
keep my house, and it was so
Mm.
easy to use that pressure to just not take the time to rest. And then I later, it took me 6 years to get doctors that would listen to me. So by the time I got in to see the chronic fatigue specialists and all of that stuff, they were like, well, the first 4 years are the most important for resting when you have chronic fatigue. And like
Yep.
at no point in time did any of the doctors that I saw like take me seriously enough to be like, you need to rest or anything. So I just blew through that window, trying to keep it together. And maybe I still would have had to do that stuff, but there are lots of things that I could have just sat my ass down and, you know,
And it's like how much of this stuff ended up mattering later that we filled our time with or did when we could have been resting.
yeah.
That's
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I have to remind myself because I'm like usually even if I'm doing one thing like watching TV or something, I'm doing something else too. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I'm ever just doing one thing. And except for when I'm falling asleep, and even when I'm falling asleep, I'm listening to a podcast. So,
Can't do that. I can't have any like my brain, if there's any noise, I am engaged and I am fully awake. In order to fall asleep, I have to choose to fall asleep. And I'll go to sleep really
Mm-hmm.
quickly once I make the choice, but I have to like do the routine and then I'm like out. But if there's a podcast on, I would listen to it and then I'd listen to the next one. And then, it's like I used to watch all the classic movies until like
mhm.
10 in the morning because like I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go to bed after this movie, but then there'd be the next one and I would not sleep the entire time.
That's how I am right now with reading. Like,
Oh
Oh,
yeah, books are
oh my God, I've been in such a bad but so good of a reading kick. And like I'm always just like one more chapter, one more chapter, one more chapter. And then eventually I'll be like, because I have a Kindle. And so I'll say, okay, I'm just gonna get to like 75% of the book and then I'm going to be done. And then I'll finish the last 25% later. And then I'll get to 75%. And I'm like, it's only 25% more. And then I'll end up finishing a book when I started at like 15%.
yeah, yeah. I I love reading. I'm a voracious reader and I have not read this last year. I normally it's 50 to 70 books a year is like my average. And I haven't read this year because I started crafting and doing art, which is very new for me. And I know that if I get into reading, I have to basically do whatever it is I'm doing. So like I can't like read and then
Mhm.
go do something else. And I know if I get into reading, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop like doing the other stuff. And so I'm just like,
Oh my
next
God.
year.
Yeah.
I
I've
listen to
been wanting to work on my
audiobooks.
puzzles. I've been wanting to work on my puzzles. I was in a huge puzzle kick. I have one like on our puzzle table. And then my back went out and I couldn't do puzzles. Um, and so I started reading, but now I can't stop reading, but I want to go back to my puzzle and finish the one that's on that damn table.
I love puzzles.
I know the struggle. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm I don't know how to make space for all of the things.
Yep.
And
Just
I do all the things and don't do any of them well. So,
that's, it's interesting because before I got my ADHD diagnosis, I feel like I was much more like that. And I relied very heavily on like deadlines. And then after like being medicated for about a year and all my routines, like I was chronically late to everything. I could not figure out how to be on time to anything, no matter how hard I tried. It was annoying. And then, so like every time I went anywhere, I was stressed out because I was running late. And now I'm always on time. And it was like, I didn't make that choice. It was like all of a sudden I was able to start like, you know, and so I used to just like start things and never finish them. And since the diagnosis, I actually will start things. I stay focused on them, even if I do kind of mix in other things and take breaks and get distracted a lot. But that I have that primary thing. And then I actually finish it. And that's like, it took me like 40 some odd years to get to the point to be able to do that. And I never realized how much I'd internalized sort of the identity of not ever finishing things,
Mhm.
and so every time I finish something, I'm like, wow, I can finish things.
most of my
Must be that's
things,
like a huge
yeah,
change.
most of my things don't have an end. So it's like just a bunch of things I'm constantly doing,
Yeah, like the podcast.
like the podcast or TikTok or, um, I guess I guess you could say that photography is one that I like have a start and a finish to them, and I like to get them done really fast. But to me, it's one thing because I'm constantly editing, because I'm constantly doing photo shoots.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like a one single thing to me. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah.
photography for me always was just a thing. It was just one big thing. It
Hmm.
didn't matter if I did a wedding or I went out and shot like a sports thing or whatever. It was photography was just the thing.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Which I love. I love editing. That's my favorite part, and they get
That's
way
my
more
I love
at
your
pictures.
least
edit
It's
I
your
pictures.
can't
least.
I can't stand it. Like we get trade. Like I love taking photos, but I literally have photos that are like 15 years old. I have the raw files and they never got
Send them.
shared because I couldn't edit them. My brain was just like, cannot do it. And I was actually hoping that getting the ADHD treated would help. It did not. I just don't like doing
We have our Dropbox. You can send them to my Dropbox and I will edit them.
it.
It's my favorite part. And I love seeing them love it too. And yes, I like photos that are just the way I took them, but I know the people that are having me do them like the art in it of changing it and making it artistic and seeing it the way that like my brain saw it when we were taking the pictures. And that's why I like doing the like creepier photo shoots, the darker fall awesomeness. And I'm excited to do my Christmas ones because it's different, it's colorful, it's bright, and I'm gonna have to figure out a different way to edit them than my presets that I have that I just tweak after that I've created for each each thing I
Yeah,
do.
that'll be
But
fun.
yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited, but scared at the same time
You
that
ever
they're
do
not
like
gonna.
snow photo shoots? I feel like snow photo shoots would be so pretty.
I have some plans. I want to do some with people in like long red dresses in the snow. So it has that like
Mm.
contrast. And I'm planning to do some with Evelyn to
I
like
Of
feel like
post
course.
them.
I feel like you could get pretty spooky with like the snow, especially because like the trees are all like
Hmm.
dead looking and stuff like that. That would be.
And it
That would be
adds the
fun.
dimensions and different
If you need any models, I volunteer as tribute.
woo, I will accept. uh Speaking of which, last night I my other daughter Rebecca had a concert trombone, and Evelyn went with me, and she's sitting there plugging her ears, like overwhelmed by the sound. I'm like, oh, I forgot. Ray and I took Evelyn to go see Aurora, and Evelyn was like hiding underneath.
I know. I was just thinking the other day, I was just going through like concerts that will be in town coming up, and I'm like, what would be doable for
Probably
her little nervous
outdoor.
system?
I think it'll have to
Yeah.
be an outdoor one where it's
Outdoors a
not.
lot easier. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
'Cause
I have such a hard time with concerts. I always go to the very back or like in the balcony where there's less like people being annoying and touching me. And then
Mhm.
like by about halfway through, and I don't go to the like the openers. I just go to the main show because I know that I'll be toast by, if I go earlier. And then by halfway through, I'm so overstimulated that I'm just like, and like the last concert I went to, I went with my son. He took me for my birthday, and we had a lot of fun. But I reached that point where I was just dragging, and I look over him, and he's looking like Eeyore too, and I'm just like, "Yep."
good.
Yep.
We tried. We took her to the back. We
We
right
tried so
outside
hard,
where
but
we could still kind of
we
hear.
just, yep. Instead, we turned in for the night and like
Went to
got
Taco Bell, I
Perkins,
think.
Taco Bell, Taco
Uh,
Bell, and then
Taco
maybe
Bell.
didn't we like
We did get
get
pie.
dessert from Perkins?
I think
Pie.
so.
Yep. Hmm. Yep. I
I
think
think
we enjoyed that much
I think
more.
she ate my piece too.
Did. Yeah. Not surprising.
Oh gosh, yeah, but I understand the overstimulation. It just happens differently for me. For me, it's visual more than
Yeah.
sound. And so
Hmm.
like when I go to like an amusement park or something, and it's really busy and there's a lot of people moving around, or it's nighttime and there's lights everywhere, that's when I get like overstimulated. And or if I'm inside and there's a lot of tall guys around me. So
Oh yeah.
that's actually why I stopped going to church, was because when they would like stand and do worship or whatever, and there's like tall guys all around
You
me,
can't see anything, you're just staring at the back of them. And yeah.
and
Yep.
I'd have to leave every time. So
Yeah.
Yep. I
I
don't
think
blame
it's
you on that one.
I use all of the above. I mean, I wear earplugs and stuff that helps, but it's like everything, even the physical sensation of like the vibrations. And that's why like outdoor concerts are a lot easier to tolerate in general.
yeah.
Yep.
I like so there's certain vibrations I do like, but I
Mhm.
do understand that. So like the physical touch and stuff, I don't want people all around me either.
Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
but there's a death metal festival I usually go to every year, and it's my favorite thing. I stand there, and there's usually places you can stand away from everyone else, so there's no one touching you or anything, and I just feel the music. It has nothing to do with the words or anything. It's like you can feel each individual aspect of the
Mhm.
music like in your body.
But there's something
Yeah.
like, I don't know, for me, like feeling it in my body feels like really soothing, but it's also very dependent because I've been to like concerts where like the openers specifically for some reason, however they play or whatever it is, like it's very harsh, especially because I go to a lot of like rock concerts and like these like newer bands with their drum sets and guitars. It's all very harsh.
It
But yeah,
it
that's overstimulating.
a lot of shows they also only do they only like set the sound levels for the headliner, and so none of the other bands
Yes.
sound as good because
Oh,
they're
That
not
makes
mixed.
sense. That makes a lot of sense. I was thinking that
that makes
while,
sense.
yeah, while Ray was talking, I'm like, oh, I bet that's why it never sounds as good.
I never thought of that. I always wondered why opener sounded so crummy.
Unless they're
But
big,
that
unless
makes
it's
a lot.
like
Yes.
Those
specific.
really big
Yeah, because
shows, yeah.
Yep, I
Mhm.
had when
Was it
Muse
Pair?
was in
Oh,
town,
mm,
Evanescence had opened for them and they had like another opener. Like that opener was rough. Evanescence is my favorite band, so I'll see them anywhere. But like their sound, that was much better. But yeah, compared to the first opener, it was yeah, that was so bad.
oh, yeah. I have not been to a live show in way too long. I think, oh, I went
Pre-co
to, oh,
I was
Panic
gonna
at the
say
Disco.
pre-COVID. Yeah.
No, I did go. So I did go in Colorado because I had box seats at the Ball Arena, Pepsi Arena, if you live in Colorado, and you don't want to call it that. And so I saw Panic at the Disco. One of their last shows was there, and they didn't tell anyone, so I'm glad I got to go. And I saw Trans Siberian Orchestra. I think those are the only musical things I saw there, and the rest were all like sports games and monster trucks.
Monster trucks. Yeah. Love that. I love the sound. You have to wear earplugs, but I love the sound of the engines, you know?
I like the smell.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they're just
I've
all
never
boingy,
been to
boingy,
like a
boingy.
monster truck rally.
Oh
Oh, it's
yeah,
so fun.
you gotta
Really?
at least
Yeah.
once. Yeah.
hmm
I guess I just don't really know anyone or didn't know I knew anyone
I
who like
didn't
went to
know.
those and never been invited. Yeah.
It was from work. They were just last minute, were like, hey, do you want some tickets to this? And I'm like, okay.
I
But it was
like
so
Yeah.
fun.
I grew up with it. My parents used to go to tractor pulls and stuff like that. And like I loved like pickup trucks when I was little. Like there was like Bigfoot, the first one, and I was obsessed with that truck. And yes. So
Awesome. It was Monster Jam was the one that I went to. And it has a lot of trucks that people follow and they go all over the place. They were up in Canada and
did they have
like,
the one with the dog
yeah,
ears?
yeah, there was a devil one that had like breathes fire. And then
Ooh.
what were the other ones did cool stuff too. But
Yeah.
yeah, that devil one, that guy, he's a daredevil. The guy that was in that truck.
Yeah.
Uh,
It would be I always
the
like I always want to
grave
drive one.
digger.
Gravedigger, yeah, one of the classics.
You should drive one, but our bodies would. So you'll have to do it right before you die because you'll probably
Yeah,
die doing.
yeah. I'll just fall apart, like, I'll subluxate into like many pieces and oh no.
Oh no. Uh, but back to what we were discussing.
Oh, I actually wanted to ask a
Yeah.
question because we got derailed.
hmm
Art therapy, ART therapy, like,
hmm
can you define that? Because we kind of got like in the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so art therapy is actually not something that I'm trained in. But it's kind of like a subcategory of EMDR. So it's called accelerated resolution therapy. And it's, from my understanding, it um, can help. It's not as intense as EMDR. And it utilizes like very similar like not approaches, but like the bilateral stimulation or the eye movements. It uses the same approach, but it's more of the protocol that's different. So the script or what we follow with a certain memory. So with EMDR, we're processing a memory, whereas ART, as I understand, it's kind of like looking at almost changing the memory and how it is stored in our brain. So we can kind of like create a new narrative around this memory. And some people are like, well, this feels like I'm lying to myself. Well, this didn't happen. But it utilizes like our brain's amazing ability to like just take in information, and if we like replay information or let it solidify, like our it allows our brains to kind of just like like almost download that information as though like that was fact. So it's kind of like if you imagine rehearsing like playing a sport and you imagine like performing well, doing this consistently has actually shown to like improve your performance. And so we can utilize like imagery. So I think of like EMDR, like using a safe space. So a
Mhm.
safe, calm place where we imagine just like a safe and calming space that we can bring ourselves to. Um, it might not be actually happening, but our brains can't really decipher it from like, okay, I created this versus this happened. So it's kind of like overwriting the memory to make it less traumatizing
That's, yeah,
Interesting.
instead of like processing the memory itself.
I see why
So
it's
it's less intense.
controversial, but I see
Yep.
why it would be helpful as well.
Like the
Hmm.
narrative, like the way that we narrate our stories to ourselves has a lot of power, because,
Absolutely.
like you can make something just completely negative that if you were to
Mhm.
just and you're not making up anything, if you just open up the perspective a little bit to look at something that's happened later that's more positive, you can create like a narrative that has more to it, and there's more resilience to be found in that. So to me, I mean, I that's
Absolutely.
kind of what I'm getting from what you were saying, is that that was part of it.
Completely. Yep. Completely.
That's awesome. What resources would our listeners have to be able to find either information or um, their own type, like therapists or things that would be able to, I guess, use some of the tools that would be helpful for
Hmm.
them?
Absolutely. That's a good question. So, um, in terms of finding therapists, if you are a Minnesota listener, I recommend, especially if like anything about Air Network or doing any therapy that is more geared towards like dissociation and understanding it and like working with it, I recommend going to the Air Network website, which let me pull up my, it's
And we
Air
can
Network.
we can post it in the description to the links to it.
Perfect. Yeah, it's the Air Network Training Institute, and I can send Victoria the link to this, but there is a link that um and again I will post it, but there's a link that you can search for therapists in your area. And then also other resources, if you are not in Minnesota, and or if there, I mean, there are Air Network therapists in other states that you can find on that website as well. There's just limited
Hmm.
therapists available. But if you are interested in like similar therapies, internal family systems is a really good one. It doesn't necessarily go through all the like neurobiology of trauma and dissociation, but it is still very helpful. Um, Other resources, let me think. There are a few books that are really good. I would say one of my favorite books about dissociation that recently came out this year is a book called Dissociation Made Simple by Jamie Marriage or Jerry Merrick. I don't know how to pronounce their last name. But they are an individual who has a dissociative disorder and is a psychologist, and kind of wrote a book for people with dissociation, for therapists who work with clients with dissociation, or for people who have loved ones with dissociation. And it's kind of like, as a name implies, like it's dissociation made simple. So kind of just like giving information about dissociation in simple terms, to better understand it for ourselves, for our clients, for our loved ones. And that is a phenomenal read. And it's been a bit since I've read it, and I think I'm only halfway through, so I still need to finish it. But that one is a great resource, and I would start there if you are like just learning about your own dissociation. Like don't overwhelm yourself, don't overload yourself. But yeah, start there. And if you are curious, if you have dissociation, like talk with your therapist about it if you have one. If you don't, go on to Psychology Today. That is a great website that I recommend. You can search for a therapist in your area, and you can kind of search by specialty area. And I also recommend, like, when you reach out, ask a few questions. Ask, like, what do you know about dissociation? Do you have any specific trainings? How do you work with dissociation? Because a lot can say, like, I work with trauma and dissociation, but um, it's more in a general sense,
Mhm.
because there's still a lot we don't know about dissociation. It's still very limited, unfortunately. So interview your therapists or potential therapists and just kind of pick their brains for their knowledge and see if it feels like it could be a good fit.
That is a great suggestion because a lot of times we don't think about the fact that we can actually pick our therapist and interview them and realize whether or not it's a fit for us. And we don't have to feel bad if it's not a fit and we can move on
No,
to another therapist.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. And like it's okay to like dig into them as well. Like don't just trust the like the specialties. Look at their trainings, and then maybe, like, if you don't know what a certain therapy approach is, Google what that training is and make sure that this is what you could benefit from. Because a lot of, I've seen so many times that therapists put out, like, I specialize in PTSD, but there's no training that shows any training that says, like, you know, anything about trauma. So it's okay to really dig into these potential therapists, because I mean, this is who you're going to potentially be working with. And it's okay to be picky. We don't always get to do with this with doctors.
Mhm.
So the fact that, like, there's more information out there, for therapists, like, utilize that. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's a deal breaker for me if I'm like, I'd like to ask you some questions and they're like, no. I'm like, all right, then you don't get my money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always ask if they can do like a quick 15-minute phone consultation. There's nothing wrong with that. And I've also suggested, like, to friends, emailing and saying, like, here's kind of what I'm looking for. Here's some, like, experiences that I've had that have not landed well with me in therapy, and then, do you feel comfortable with with these things, or do you have any recommendations? Uh,
Right.
Yeah.
so put things out there, ask questions, do research, do digging. It's okay to do all that, because essentially this is someone that you are putting all your trust into. And I mean, we don't just go into a committed relationship with the first person we meet on Tinder, and that's what Psychology Today can end up being for therapists.
Yeah.
We find someone available who, like, checks our boxes, but they might not actually be the right fit for us. So,
And if you
um,
do that, you probably need a therapist.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
it
I'm
took me
grateful, so you cannot come see me. I'm sorry. Just put that out there. I am over my capacity.
What were you saying, Lee?
oh, that like with my therapist, it took me probably like 2 years of like working with her to even like start opening up. Cause like for me, I had like a specific thing that I wanted from therapy, which was I was at the height of my illness and I needed a place that I could talk about what I was going through, the shit with my doctors, my body, because it was so traumatic. And I just wanted to be able to vent because like as soon as I got sick, like everybody disappeared and I was so isolated. So I basically was like, I don't want to talk about anything else. So don't ask me about my childhood. Don't like, these are like things, they're not important to me right now. But
Yep.
after, about like 2 years or so, and when my health issues started to calm down, all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay. And and I started sharing more stuff that like with I just never did with previous therapists because the connections weren't right for me.
And probably
Yep.
them respecting that you only wanted to talk about those things and they were there for you through that helps you be able to open up later.
And the way that you
Definitely.
could express those boundaries and were explicit, like, I'm not going here, and this is what I need.
Yeah.
And don't don't ever be afraid to tell your therapist what you are needing. As a therapist, I try to call myself out and say, I'm noticing I want to go into like a problem solving, but I want to check in with you to see like, do you need me to like listen and validate right now, or would it be helpful for me to give you some of my thoughts, because like therapists want to help, and sometimes like Lee, like you said, we just need someone to hear us.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I get mad when I get unsolicited advice. So like
Mm-hmm.
she's learned how to offer, if she wants it, she lets me give her permission for that kind of thing, instead of
Yep.
just, because I get very like, I don't like unsolicited advice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's sometimes it's useful to have somebody ask you those questions. Well, what about this? Or have you thought about that? And then kind of be like, usually I've already thought about it, but every now and again I'll be like, I'm going to think about that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I kind of like that about Lee that that you're okay with telling people, "No, I don't want this advice from you right now."
Yeah. I'm very like on
Good
Facebook,
strength.
I'll make a post and I'll be like, if you give me unsolicited advice, I will block you. like
And then they still do it.
they still do it. And I'm just like, oh man. like, come on. Or I'll be
Uh,
like when my heart cat died, I was very explicit. No Rainbow Bridge stuff. That's creepy to me. And don't
Mm,
say you're sorry. These are things that's a social script that makes me very stressed out. It does not feel good to hear it. And I
yep.
said it explicitly because I know that people are going to say it because most people rely on social scripts, right? So
Yep.
like I put it there. I said, if you're, I told you how to love me and you still did the thing, So I blocked like 15 people, like
Mm-hmm.
it's like bonk.
Yep. Yep. I hate those social scripts.
we talk about it
Yeah.
a lot. We hate them too.
Yeah. I don't like some of them have meaning that I can be like, I can see why it became a social script. And some of them, if
Yeah.
you actually think about it, what are they even saying? What does it even mean? I don't know.
Right. Right. Totally.
Especially
Totally.
after like someone passes away or like those are the worst ones. Those are
Oh
oh
my God.
Or
Yep.
like, yeah, or health diagnosis. People like they want
mhm.
you to be a warrior
Yeah.
instantly.
Other people
There's
have it worse than you.
yeah, like there's no opportunity to just be in the experience, to have grief, to
Mm,
have pain, to have hardship. Everybody wants everything to be okay all the time, and
right.
you know,
My last year, in October last year, my dad passed away, and like it was a leading up thing. In March, he had a really bad heart attack that he survived. But we knew he didn't have long. And so I would talk about like my dad's in the hospital again, he's not doing well. And like people would say again, like, I'm so sorry to hear that. Like, I hope he gets better soon. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, it's not a thing where he's going to get better. He's going to die this year. I
Mhm.
mhm,
just don't know when.
yeah,
And like that was something that people could not sit with. Like they I could sense this like almost it felt like a need that they had to say like, I hope he gets better soon. And
Mhm.
yeah.
it's like the
And
he's
that's what it's like. That's for you. That's not for me.
Yeah. It's
exactly.
I've gotten it with my health issues where will literally I'll mention something that's a forever health issue. It's never going to get better. And they're like, "Well, I hope you'll get better soon." I'm like, "I'm not going to get better. This is a forever thing." And they're so uncomfortable. It's like
Yep.
and I'm like, "You literally just did not accept me."
Mhm.
And you're uncomfortable. I'm not taking care of you. And I
Right.
just drop the conversation. Like,
Mhm.
like the trifecta for me, those things only get worse as you get older. Like they do not get better. And right now, because I did so much and worked so much, it wasn't even fun stuff because I worked so much. The degeneration from EDS has gotten horrible.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I didn't even get to like have anything fun to show for that. But people are like, oh, I hope it gets better. It doesn't. Like arthritis doesn't get better. Like
Right.
degeneration of your tissues doesn't get better. Like it
I
doesn't.
feel
Yeah.
like when you're so young, it's so hard for people to accept that,
Hmm.
especially when you're like, this isn't going to get better. Like 30, 40, even 50, like 20, like that's so young. And so people can't accept like, I'm just not going to get better. This is a chronic condition that is going to continue to worsen. And like people just can't wrap their heads around it. And they themselves become so uncomfortable with that idea that they can't even like perspective take and like get out of themselves to really see like, okay, but how would that be to live that way? Like
Yeah.
why are you so adamant about like ending this conversation to like get out of your own distress? Like
Hmm.
good for you that you can do that when this person is living in that cage and can't do that. Like I'm glad you can do that.
I
Yeah.
envy them so much.
Those are those are people that I don't need to keep around though. It's like it's literally like they've just told me you're not
Mm,
a receptive, you're not a safe person, so I'm
right.
you're not going to be a friend, you know.
Yeah. I feel like on TikTok because I've been so open because my therapist had me use it like a diary. Because I'd kept everything in for so long that she was like, I feel like you should try out talking to people by people you don't even know. And it
Mhm.
helps so much with me and now I can't shut up. But
That's my Facebook. I journal. That's where I do my
yeah,
journaling, and
but
it's only like three or four people that respond, and if they mute me, that's okay. It's
that's
I'm not
fine.
it's my reality. I don't even like
Exactly.
fixate. I don't fixate on stuff in a negative way, and I tend to, like, my therapist tells me, she's like, you do more than a lot of able-bodied
Mhm.
people do, you
Hmm.
know. um and because I get very excited, and I I'll be like, oh, this hurts me, but you know what, it makes me happy to do it, so I'm going to do it,
Mhm.
and so I try to share everything, but I try to keep it real. Like I stay, because I do have like, like, because I dress up like in clown and stuff. And so I have a presence that's kind of detached from who I am, but I still will occasionally make sure that I share like realistic things, because I know that people have this tendency to like idealize people online and stuff. And just like, nope, keeping it real. I'm a clown, but I'm disabled. So,
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. That's what
Yep.
I was gonna say is I mix it in with my comedy and with cosplay and with the fun things. Hi, Mika. And see, it's not a fake background. And
it's a screensaver.
yeah. But so I mix it in with those things, but I want to stay real. I want people to know just because I'm doing these things doesn't mean I'm better. It's
Yeah.
Hmm.
because people will comment on those things. So I'll post something of me on a good day where I was doing something active, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're feeling better." It's like, no, actually, because I did that day, the next day sucked.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
I just spent the next 3 days in agony, but okay.
uh,
Hmm.
but it
Hmm.
is helpful for me to mix it in with everything else and be able to have that the humor because I've always masked my medical problems with humor because I've had them forever. I've been sick since middle school. Um, isn't
Yeah.
she so cute?
Yeah.
She's
I
so
started having like chronic pain when I was like 8 or so, and
hmm
with the EDS and stuff. And it just, and I was taught very effectively to not, pay attention to or take my health stuff seriously. So I did, I had a really good doctor when I was like 19, 20, an osteopath, and that she kind of helped shift my perspective a little bit. So I got a little bit better about taking care of myself, but then I didn't have health insurance for like,
hmm
15 years. So then I couldn't do anything anyways. But yeah, I talking about it now, because I used to just feel like it I used to be like, well, if I tell people how many things I have wrong with me, they're going to think I'm gross, or they're going to think I'm less than in some way. Um, And so I didn't used to. And now it's like really important to me that like people see me and that is part of me. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
it detracts from my experience, but it doesn't really detract from who I am in relation to other people.
Yep. Yep.
You could be our therapist now. Oh, that's awesome. But definitely send me all the links where they can
Yes.
um, anything important or any just you can even type up a bio for me and I will put it in there.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I can do that. I think I can type more articulate than I sometimes speak.
You sound
So
great.
Same.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But I will also include like the link to the Air Network
Mhm.
uh, website just so readers can like read that like blip about it to
Mhm.
learn more because there's so much more about it that I couldn't even like say.
You should start your own
So
podcast.
I know
You don't
that
know
along
you have the
with
time for that.
12 billion things. Yeah. I was like, I just finished my first DBT air training. That's another thing we're doing. We're training like the public now, other therapists in like our combo DBT air, and we're preparing for our January one and
I
the
was
first
gonna,
one.
yeah, I was gonna ask you, is there a resource for therapists to find this as well?
Yeah, actually. So parkercollins.com under uh training and careers, there is if you scroll down a little bit, there's a blip about DBT training, and then there is a sign up link if you would like to get trained in what I do. If you are a
Awesome.
therapist, yeah, you can attend virtually or in person, and yeah, it's not it's not that expensive for what you're getting.
Perfect. I
Nice.
love it. That'll help lots and lots of people. So if you're a therapist out there or you could send this to your therapist.
Absolutely, you do not have to be in Minnesota to take the training.
hmm
Yes.
Perfect. Is there anything else you want to add before we sign off here
Hmm.
and do our super awkward sign off?
I don't know. I would just say that like anyone who is taking the step towards being in therapy, who's doing the work in therapy, I mean, I'm just kudos to you. And if you've been considering it, I mean, even that alone is a huge step. It's scary. It's hard to get into therapy. And I also apologize for those who have had really shitty therapists because there are shitty therapists out there, and just don't give up. There are some not so shitty therapists out there too, um, but you're taking a courageous journey and you deserve that.
That's
Awesome.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm starting with a new one next month or this month, next month, and I'm scared.
Nice.
So
I just started with a new one a couple months ago too, and I'm still scared.
mine quit, and then the next one got fired right before I was gonna go meet with her. And so it's been like 3 months that I've been waiting now. 'Cause-
Wow.
so yeah, I'm excited but also scared because I need to research them and
Well, feel free to like message me and I can like
yeah,
do some of
yeah.
my own digging and be like thumbs up or thumbs down.
I'll send you their information. It's in my portal, so
Please do. Yes.
I will. But yes, thank you everybody for listening. If you go onto YouTube and you have any questions, I can forward them to Ray and we can get answers, or Ray can go on there and read them too. And
Absolutely.
we can get answers or resources over to you. Or if there's anything you want to follow up with, and we can have Ray again and have some questions that you have for us to ask. We're more than happy to do that. And as always, we will put our Patreon links and everything in the box, and you can join our Discord by joining us on Patreon. And Yeah, so happy day.